This week on For the Record.
So I'm here to talk about the future.
193 absentee ballots went uncounted last November, triggering multiple investigations and the previous clerk's resignation. But now the city has a new leader for that department.
I have a great foundation in accountability and transparency and in accessibility.
We sit down one-on-one with the new clerk to see how she plans to take on the role. But first, Missy Hughes enters the race for governor as the Democratic primary field continues to grow.
I'll be able to show the experience that I have in the private sector and in the public sector.
How she says she's cutting through the noise. And later, new faces in the race for both Wisconsin's Supreme Court and Dane County Circuit Court. That's all coming up this morning.
We now present For the Record.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Ellie La Liberté. Well, we start this week by talking money. Dane County faces a $31 million shortfall in 2026. It's a situation County Executive Melissa Agard says is driven by rising costs and limited revenue streams, and only further complicated this week by the federal government shutdown.
Let's be honest. Since President Trump's election, it's been pretty chaotic in Washington, D.C., and there have been threats of government shutdowns before this current shutdown. It doesn't seem like it's going to become less chaotic, and it is important for us to think about our decisions in the long term and how it is that they're going to affect our community.
Agard announced her nearly $904 million 2026 executive budget on Wednesday. And if finalized as is, county employees will see the impact. The 2026 budget is roughly 4% less than last year's budget. The changes include a hiring freeze for vacancies that are not essential and a temporary 1% pay cut for county employees in 2026. In exchange, those employees will receive 21 hours of vacation time in the budget. This will save the county about $2 million. County Board Supervisor Patrick Miles says at least one department will have less resources next year.
It's sort of like squeezing a balloon. We have to have a balanced budget in the end. So if we're looking at applying more resources in one area, we're going to have to reduce it elsewhere.
The Board of Supervisors will have a hearing on the 20th, and the budget is expected to be finalized sometime next month. And Madison police confirmed immigration enforcement officials, or ICE, were in Madison on Thursday. Madison Police Chief John Patterson released a statement Friday that the department was made aware of ICE's presence after the agents had already left. Centro Hispano of Dane County posted on Facebook that 7 people were detained in a targeted enforcement operation on Madison's northeast side. The local nonprofit reported that the arrest took place at a single residence on Thursday morning. Now, despite ongoing rumors of ICE activity in Madison, Thursday's incident is the first confirmed presence of ICE in Wisconsin's capital. And this week, Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin is officially pausing abortions. The organization blamed President Trump's so-called Big Beautiful Act, which included a provision to defund the organization. The pause leaves just 2 independent clinics in Milwaukee as the only sites in the state that can perform that service. Those clinics will likely see an influx in patients. Now, to reduce a backlog, State Representative Lisa Subeck and State Senator Kelder Roys introduced legislation Wednesday morning to increase access to abortion. Now, the bill would repeal several current abortion requirements, including that patients must attend 2 appointments with the same physician 24 hours apart, telehealth and medication abortion restrictions, ultrasound restrictions, and other physician requirements.
There is no legitimate reason for this restriction other than to try to reduce the availability of providers to provide care.
We're sounding the alarm, but we're also saying we can do something about this.
Wisconsin Family Action, an organization that promotes conservative Christian family values, criticizes the proposed legislation.
What we would argue is that the intentional killing of unborn children is not health care. We want to make sure that that bill does not pass because we truly want women to have informed consent. We want women to be aware of what they're walking into.
Roy's and Subeck's legislation finished circulating for co-sponsorship on Friday. Meanwhile, Republicans in the state legislature proposed a bill to, quote, clarify the definition of abortion. The bill would define that abortion is not an early induction or C-section performed due to medical emergency. It It also states that abortion is not the removal of a miscarriage or an ectopic pregnancy, embryonic or molar pregnancy. And now to the topic that we keep coming back to week after week. The Democratic field for the race of Wisconsin's next governor grew once again. Missy Hughes, the former state economic development director, announced her bid on Monday. Now, as an attorney, Hughes is pitching herself as someone who is not a career politician. She did, however, spend 6 years leading the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation as part of Governor Evers' administration. And prior to working there, she spent 17 years at Organic Valley, a dairy cooperative.
I'm Missy Hughes. There are a few things you need to know about me.
Missy's a Democrat who understands the economy.
She spent years growing Wisconsin businesses
And worked to strengthen main streets across Wisconsin. The biggest thing, I'm running for governor.
Now, one thing you don't hear in that campaign ad was Hughes aggressively attack President Trump like some of the other Democratic candidates in this race. I asked her about that during our sit-down conversation this week.
I talk to Wisconsinites, I talk to people in my community who are so tired of the division. And really the fighting is just yelling at each other at this 500,000-foot level. And I want to get back to our communities where we're working together and we're really thinking about how do we solve problems together.
Now, Hughes is running her platform largely on the economy, so we discussed tariffs. President Trump claims his tariffs plan will return manufacturing back to the states, but Hughes says she has some concerns about the other implications they may bring to Wisconsin.
What I'm worried about is the tariffs are adding such instability to our economy that we're going to see companies and businesses start to say, maybe I'm not going to hire as many people this year. Maybe I'm not going to make that investment. And that has ripple effects throughout the economy and really affects Wisconsinites.
After shoring up nearly $200,000 in the first 24 hours in her race, we also talked about how she plans to run her campaign.
My approach is to really talk about the kitchen table issues that Wisconsinites are facing, but also to demonstrate that I have a record of changing that, of finding solutions, of making things work, whether it's bringing companies like Eli Lilly or Microsoft to Wisconsin or working to create 9,500 businesses in all 72 counties. I've done the work, and I want to be able to tell Wisconsinites about that.
Now, there's more to that conversation with Hughes. You can learn how she plans to stand apart from her competition in our full interview up right now on channel3000.com. And Hughes is jumping into an already packed Democratic primary, as this is the first time in about 16 years the race has been open with no incumbent running. She joins Lieutenant Governor Sarah Rodriguez, Milwaukee County Executive David Crowley, Madison State Senator Calder Royce, Madison State Representative Francesca Hong, beer vendor Ryan Sternad, and former Representative Brett Holsey in the Democratic primary. Then on the other side of the ticket is Congressman Tom Tiffany and Washington County Executive Josh Schoeman. And next on For the Record, after 193 missing absentee ballots weren't counted in the November election and months of investigations, Madison has a new city clerk. We sit down with Clerk Lydia McComas after a year of turmoil for the department. Welcome back to For the Record. Well, after a year of turmoil, the Madison Clerk's office has a new face in charge. But let's take a look at what led us here. In November 2024, that election, 193 absentee ballots went uncounted in 3 different wards. Now, this triggered 2 investigations, one from the city of Madison, which concluded in April, and for the first time ever, the Wisconsin Elections Commission voted to open an investigation of its own. Now, the WEC's investigation concluded in July, and that investigation found that the former clerk left for vacation the day after she was notified of the missing ballots. The former clerk, Mary Beth Witzel-Bale, was placed on administrative leave in March and ultimately resigned from her role in April. And that brings us to this week, when Lydia McComas took over as the new city clerk. Now, she was previously the voter engagement manager with the largest county in Minnesota. And in our sit-down interview, she emphasized her focus on transparency. So what are you specifically bringing to the Madison City Clerk role?
Sure, yeah. So like I said, I'm dedicated to public service. I have a great foundation in accountability, in transparency, and in accessibility. So when I was at Hennepin County, I was voter engagement division manager, and so I had a hand in every part of the elections to make sure that I knew what was going on so I could communicate that with the public. So I'm really bringing that foundation of election knowledge to this office as well as management. And so all of that is what brings me here and gets me prepared to take over.
And so the Madison City's Clerk's office has been in quite a bit of turmoil over the past year. Why were you interested in this role?
Yeah, I'm interested in this role because I am committed to serving the public, to election administration. I think that this is an exciting time to be an election administrator, be a clerk, and so that's part of the reason why I wanted to take on this role, is because I knew that the staff here are wonderful people to work with, and I'm excited to be able to support them in that.
Yeah, and I kind of want to dive a little bit deeper into this topic because it's been something kind of at the forefront of the clerk's office for the past year. So when those 193 absentee ballots went uncounted last year, an investigation revealed that your predecessor went on vacation the next day and didn't act in accordance with her role. How would you have reacted when finding out that ballots went uncounted?
Sure, yeah, so I'm not necessarily here to talk about the predecessor, I'm here to talk about the future. However, if I were to know about an incident that happened on Election Day, I would involve my partners in the city and then the public too. You know, I'm really dedicated to transparency and making sure that the public knows that the clerk's office is upholding election law and Wisconsin law. So communication is first and foremost for me.
Now, the investigation also found that the absentee ballots likely never even made it to their polling sites. So for you, what is best practice for handling absentee ballots?
Sure, yeah. So best practices have already been implemented in Madison. Those best practices happened at the beginning of this year for all of 2025 elections. So those processes are in place. So election officials, the poll workers, have been informed of what to do on Election Day with their absentee ballots. And so the staff know about those processes. We've been working with other cities to make sure that our processes are up to date.
And so coming off of kind of a harsh year for this office, what do you think the clerk's office needs to do to restore trust with the voters?
Sure, yeah. So trust is really built and built in action. So making sure the public sees that we are being transparent, that we are upholding election law is very important. And so I think it'll take some time for some voters to build that trust back up in our office. But making sure that they know that they can come to us, they can call us if they have concerns about how things are run. We're always here for them. We're also always out in the community. And so our office really wants to make sure that folks know that they can come to us if they have questions or concerns. We're responding to the WEC order and making sure all of our processes are up to date. So really it's making sure that voters know that we are here to serve them and are transparent.
And transparency is something you mentioned multiple times in this interview. It sounds like a big priority of yours. Can you kind of touch on that a little bit further and maybe some other priorities that you have coming into this?
Sure, yeah. So transparency to me means that when mistakes happen, they're communicated immediately to the public. When things that go wrong, that they're communicated. And so making sure that we have a plan in place for that at the city level, who we communicate to when that information gets shared with the public is first and foremost for me. Other priorities for this office is making sure that the staff feel supported. You know, last year was really tough, and it was tough for everybody in election administration in the country. And so making sure that they feel supported and ready to take on 2026, which will also be a big election year. So those are two priorities. You know, I also am really interested in innovation in this office and making sure that folks have the best equipment that we can have, both for election security and just to move this office forward to the future.
In recent years, we've seen some threats of violence to election workers. Is that a concern of yours kind of moving into this role?
Yeah, it definitely is a concern. concern. It's a concern throughout the country. You know, we have really gotten very polarized and partisan, and unfortunately election offices, clerk's offices have been in that. And you know, it's really tough when the public sees you as partisan or sees you as a politician, and we always say that we're public servants, not politicians. As I go through my first couple of weeks, I'll be looking at the security that we have, looking through to make sure all of our emergency managements plans are up to date and that kind of thing. So it is something that's concerning, but it's not specific to Madison. It's a nationwide issue.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with us, and welcome to Madison.
Thank you. So honored to be here. Really appreciate it.
You can find that full interview up right now on channel3000.com. And next on For the Record, new candidates enter the race for both Wisconsin's Supreme Court and the Dane County Circuit Court. Their first pitch to voters when we come back. Welcome back to For the Record. Now, coming off the most expensive race for a seat on Wisconsin's highest court, voters are being asked once again to fill a seat. In August, conservative Justice Rebecca Bradley announced she will not seek re-election, citing what she called an alarming shift in power. And this Wednesday, Judge Maria Lazar launched her bid for that seat. Now, Judge Lazar serves on the Wisconsin Court of Appeals in District 2. She's a conservative who's worked as an assistant attorney general under former Governor Scott Walker, defending his controversial Act 10 in court. And when making her announcement, she said voters need to, quote, stop the destruction of our courts.
It is time to restore that level of judicial dedication to the court. That is precisely why I have decided to run for the open seat on the Wisconsin Supreme Court. I don't know about you, but I am concerned about the direction of our recent judicial elections. We are bombarded by political ads for a judicial position. My candidacy will be different.
Lazar is the only conservative candidate who has declared for the election, which is set for next April. Now, Judge Chris Taylor, a liberal, announced her campaign for this open seat in May. And in response to Lazar's announcement, Taylor's campaign manager said, quote, just like Rebecca Bradley, Maria Lazar has spent her career rolling back people's rights, attacking reproductive health care and voting rights, and doing the bidding of powerful special interests and her billionaire friends. Now, Lazar's name came up last year for the state Supreme Court race. Now, she opted not to run and instead endorsed Judge Brad Schimmel, who lost that race to Judge Susan Crawford. And speaking of Susan Crawford, we sat down with the first candidate to enter the race to fill her seat on the Dane County Circuit Court. Now, the founder of Madison Immigration Law and the former Chief Justice of a Court of Appeals, Huma Hassan, launched her campaign to represent who she says is the unseen and the unheard. Hassan says she's pulling on her experience as a daughter of immigrants, time as a legislative attorney for the Ho-Chunk Nation, and work as an immigration attorney for her campaign.
And so specifically, how would your work as an immigration lawyer inform your work as a judge?
Yes. As an immigration lawyer, I work at the nexus of a variety of different cases. So immigration law, even though it seems like, well, we're looking for visas and sort of status, it does have nexus and connection to a variety of topics that will be covered at the circuit court level.
And so now I kind of want to take your temperature on something we're seeing national headlines on, which is the case against the Milwaukee County Circuit Court Judge Hannah Dugan. She was landed in hot water earlier this year. So if elected, I mean, what is your reaction to this as someone who's kind of looking to enter this space?
It is concerning, and it is concerning that, you know, the federal government is looking at targeting judges, you know, but as a person who's wanting to run for judge, wanting to be a judge, and wanting to be a judge, I'm not afraid of that, you know. I'm not afraid of being targeted. I'm not afraid of the federal government. As a tribal court judge, we've had to deal with the federal government many times, but I do believe that people need to be safe in courtrooms, you know, particularly in Dane County, you know. I would make sure that if there were any ICE agents in the Dane County court, that they would go on the record.
And so kind of moving now to some more policy things we're seeing at the state level. Earlier this year, the Joint Committee on Finance rejected the governor's call to fund a force specifically for judges' security. Do you think there's a need for more protections in place for members of Wisconsin's judiciary?
Absolutely. You know, when we look at what just happened in Minnesota with the elected officials, you know, being targeted, you know, Judge Dugan at the federal court, you know, it is concerning.
And so earlier this year, you spoke at Madison's No Kings rally. Can you tell me a little bit about why you felt the need to do that?
Well, I spoke at the No Kings rally because at that time we were seeing an unprecedented federal reaction to immigrants. We were seeing, you know, and we still are seeing, we're seeing the federal takeover of various cities, you know, Washington, D.C., L.A. We're seeing people being abducted with people with masks, and we don't know if they're actually federal enforcement or not. So I felt that as a person of color, as an immigrant, I have enjoyed so many privileges. I have been able to go to law school, go to MBA school, be a practicing attorney for over 25 years. These are privileges that I've gotten that other people haven't. And I feel that it's time that we, you know, people who have principles stand up and represent people.
But there's a lot of people who do agree with the president's immigration policies. What would you say to those individuals?
This is about Dane County Circuit Court Judge. It's about all of us, and it's including them, you know. When they come before the court, it's important that their views will be heard by the court as well. There is no sort of litmus test to say, you know, are you left, are you right? This is a nonpartisan election, and I represent all the people.
And so kind of one last question here for you. What would you bring to the court that's not there right now?
Well, what I would bring to the court is my learned and my lived experience. So I bring my depth as a mother, as an immigrant, as someone who's practiced for over 25 years.
Thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate you joining us.
Thank you so much.
Now, that was a condensed version of our interview. To hear Hassan's work on the tribal court, you can find our full interview on channel3000.com. For the record, we'll be back right after this. And before you go, the World Dairy Expo is back in full swing this week, making Madison the center of the dairy industry. The expo features thousands of cows from around the country with visitors from around the world. Randy Romanansky with the State Department of Agriculture says it's also a chance to encourage the next generation.
We're America's Dairyland. It makes a lot of sense to celebrate that, but it's also a great reminder to people that, you know, especially in a state like Wisconsin where agriculture is so strong and diverse, their food comes from just down the road probably, and it's great to see consumers making that connection to farmers.
And a reminder that you can watch full episodes of the show as well as expanded interviews on our website, channel3000.com. That does it for us this week. Have a great rest of your weekend. For the record, I'm Ellie La Liberté.
This has been For the Record.